Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Good afternoon and good evening. I know it's good evening over there in Europe, where our guest and friend are coming from. Oops, let me fix that. Hi.
Now we can hear you.
You've joined us at Distill It, a 360-degree view of life in sports. My name is Wendy Rosenthal, and I am here with the lovely, amazing, wonderful partner and co-host of mine, Ira Switzer.
Your partner in crime.
My partner in crime, my partner in sports.
Partner in many things.
Many things, many things. How are you today?
I am so enjoying watching you sport the Colombia hat.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Well, you know what? That's one of the things we're going to talk about today. But
I know, but it's so bold. Right
my team.
Is this your team today?
It has to be my team for the World Cup. We'll get to it.
So
but
nice.
Guess what?
Have you officially taken on?
Well, I was going to ask you who I should go.
You don't have.
I have to root for England, but yeah.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything.
I lived there for 10 years, so I need to. No, I
give
do.
Give some support. You do. That's important.
Some support.
That's important.
But
That's
I gotta have a horse. I gotta have a horse in the race.
Well, when they play my teams,
are they in the draw that way? Are they going to play?
They're not in my groups.
Yeah.
No, not
so
yet.
Unless they make it to the end.
Well, my groups are going to make it.
Yeah.
My groups are advancing.
Will, actually.
My groups are advancing.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Welcome, everyone. We are here every other Tuesday at the beautiful studios of the Universal Broadcast Network in downtown Hollywood. Here to talk about everything to do with sports that is not analysis. It's a lifestyle sports talk show.
That is not analysis. We are not analyzing anything.
We are not analyzing the box scores. We are here to talk about the fact that sport is a metaphor for life. Ira and I are co-owners of a company called the Distillery, where we work with athletes to help them repurpose their athletic intelligence into a life beyond sports. And that's what we feel gives us the credit and the right to sit here and talk at you about how we feel about sports. And we always like to bring interesting guests on and cover many different topics. But once a quarter, we like to just freestyle it. And what does freestyling mean? It means we're just going to talk about whatever the hell is on our mind right now.
And tackle some of the questions we've gotten from our viewers over the last few months.
Exactly. We are going to tackle some of the questions, but we encourage you to put in the comment box on our Facebook pages, as well as give us a call at 323-284-7826 if there's anything that you'd like to talk about or comment on our opinions about what we're going to talk about. We want to hear from you. And one of the things that I did do before the show was put out in our social media, what's frustrating you or inspiring you about sports. And we did get some great feedback, so we will cover those things today.
Yeah.
But first, we want to do a couple of things. And we want to say hello to Jarvis Essex, our amazing engineer, producer, and security blanket. Thank you for being here. We're happy to be here with you. Also, we want to welcome our foreign correspondent who is staying up super late. We might have woken him up, but that's okay. Marshall Norble, who is a sports presenter for the Premiership Network in the UK and a frequent contributor to our show, is joining us all the way from the UK. I actually first thought that we were going to be talking about the wedding, but no wedding conversation.
We're not talking about the wedding. No.
Really?
And my invite.
Yeah, where was it?
It was beautiful. It was in Windsor. I got to go. No, I'm really joking about the last bit. No, I enjoyed that part. I got to see a lot of it live on television, as with millions around the world. And it was... I thought it was quite groundbreaking, actually. And I know how much America loved it as well, even watching Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And just seeing how, in particular, CBS seemed to have a little bit of a wild of it. So, I don't know what it is about America and the royal family. They seem to have a real attachment, a real fondness for it.
Well, we were excited, we were in tears, and we were chuckling half the time because of the the gentry of England have a certain way of expressing feelings that are very funny. Anyway, we didn't invite you on to talk about the wedding, Marshall. We invited you to talk about sports.
So. I'm glad I didn't about the wedding.
Yes.
I don't know how much expertise I would have been able to give about a royal wedding. My royal wedding knowledge isn't as much as my sporting knowledge.
Yeah, well,
but mention World Cup soccer, and Marshall's going to be
exactly
contributing a whole lot. Yes, exactly.
And also, just want to say a quick 2 shout outs. One is to my son David, who turned 6 today. It's his birthday.
Yay.
And your son,
and my son
David, who turned 6 days ago. So I don't think they're watching right now, actually. I think they're still in school. But we use them a lot to talk about on this show because they're both athletes. They both love sports, and they both play a lot of sports, and they give us a lot of good fodder for us to talk about on the show. So we love you, and happy birthday to both of you. And as always, I try and wear a hat that represents what we are talking about and what our topic is. And, you know, one of the things we had decided early on that no matter what we were going to do, we were going to talk about the World Cup. So given that, unfortunately, the USA has, taken a back seat in this World Cup, unfortunately, I asked Ava if I could borrow a World Cup hat from you.
And you're wearing my son David's hat
in celebration of David's birthday and of your family heritage, Colombia. I am wearing. It's all about you today.
It is.
And as I was saying at the beginning of the show, I now have to pick a team to follow, and so I am. Oh, Betsy Davis is saying, "Hey, Marshall." I clearly am putting a stake in the sand for Colombia.
I love it. I'll take it. We'll take it.
Okay, and I expect the face painting to come along.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get it all. Come World Cup time, I will have you dressed up in all of my teams. We'll be doing Colombia, Croatia, Nigeria, and we're gonna be ready to go.
I'm very
party
excited.
it up, rooting for my teams.
I gotta throw some England though.
That'd be great for a live show, actually.
We will.
We will.
Oh, we will.
We will do that.
We've done makeup before.
Yeah, we will come decked out.
But actually, Ava has never come in her full regalia. Like, she did some face painting, but not like her serious face painting. I think this year, Jarvis, remember when we did the Halloween show and we tried to get you to have some face painting on, which he did, after the show. So it didn't really count. But
this year you want me in full World Cup regalia?
Oh, we got it.
Yeah,
we have to.
It's a big deal. I take this very seriously.
Which is why we're going to start the show talking about the World Cup, which actually one of our followers did mention that they would like us to talk about. And it's another great thing that Marshall is here because he is not only a presenter for the Premiership Network, which is all about football, he is a staunch football fan. And I know you must be sitting there like on pins and needles waiting for this to start, right?
This is kind of like, for me, it's like Christmas Eve and being in Hamleys and having the store to yourself.
For those of you who are in the United States, Hamleys would be the equivalent of FAO Schwartz. Sorry, keep going.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the best time of year. It only happens once every 4 years. It's a month of football.
Yes.
To put it in another perspective, for 2 weeks consistently, every day, there were 3 live games. Every single day in, day out, for 2 weeks.
It's so beautiful.
Do you hear first of all,
it's so beautiful.
Do you hear the noises that are coming out of Ava's like her body? She's like, you said 2 weeks of soccer.
So true. Multiple games a day.
I mean, there are games on it, like you have, I don't know, maybe Egypt versus Uruguay, and on a regular, and no disrespect to both teams, because Egypt are actually pretty good, and so Uruguay. But when you think about it, generally, any other competition, you might think, well, you know what, I've got other things to do. But because it's the World Cup, it's like, well, I'm going to watch it anyway. Why? Yeah. Because it's the World Cup.
Right.
And because it only happens once every 4 years, and because the fact that, it is one of the biggest sporting events in the world.
Yeah.
And it is an opportunity for the best players to showcase their skills, to represent their country. But ultimately as well, use the World Cup to say to some of the big teams in Europe, here I am, come and get me.
Okay, so here's how I want to launch this conversation.
Launch.
Okay, I want to launch it from the perspective of, huge sports fan.
Right.
Grew up here in LA. Lots of amazing sports going on. Teams who've won, national championship, World Series, Super Bowls, Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Lots of sports around my life. And as an American, it really has been very recently that we have gotten into soccer/football. And I have to tell you, first of all, I love it, but the passion that is exuding, like you're sweating right now. I wish you could see her. She is moving in ways that I don't even want to know about. And Marshall is just he was tired about 10 minutes ago and he just woke up.
You said World Cup soccer, he perked right up.
So I got to say, I want to understand what the passion is. And I'll tell you, I read 2 articles. So I want you guys to speak to it because I want you to reel me in and make me this passionate.
What were the articles you read?
I read 2 articles on the Players Tribune, which we give a lot of credit to because they have
They're
some
amazing.
great articles.
Yeah.
One was by the coach of the national Brazilian team, Tite, and the other was from a player, longtime football player who is also on the national team, Danny Alves. And I read these articles. I recommend anybody who wants to understand a little bit more about the passion for the sport, read them because I mean the words coming out of their mouths about how it is, football is something that it's so ingrained. It's like you're part of a family, like the whole country gets together. You sweat, you cry, there's the emotions, you can feel the emotions. And what I want to understand, because I understand being super passionate about football and baseball, and I understand in the Olympics I get that country pride. Well, what is it about football where, it's the beautiful game, it's so emotional and I can't figure it out as much as I enjoy it. So I want to hear from you guys. What is it that is so just you're squirming and he's awake?
I would say from my experience, this is what I feel football is. It's a game where despite it's so low scoring, and it is in comparison to a lot of other sports, it has the ability to connect a raw emotion like nothing else, like no other sport. First of all, the advantage that is very easy to understand. Essentially, it's kick the ball in the net more times than your opponent. You don't need to, if you're watching it for the first time, it's pretty easy to understand what the requirements are of the game. 2, it's pure ability for me to someone to be able to watch it and to feel, oh, you know what? I feel I can be a part of that. I feel I can understand. I can relate to that. I can be in that situation. I can dream of having that moment of scoring the goal in the World Cup final to win it for my country. It's also the most played sport in the world. And it's the biggest sporting event. It's the biggest sporting occasion. Every 4 years, of course. And for me, it's regardless of who your team is, your club side, which is something very popular in American sports. You're often identified by, maybe the area you were born or the college you went to. That kind of identity. Oh, well, I'm going to support, Michigan because, I've always been a Wolverine and I went to university there. It's with especially football, but when it comes to playing for your national team, it's essentially you put all your club allegiances just to one side, even if it's just for a small time. And everybody engulfs in the fact that, okay, we're one nation here. To the point where if your country ends up having a great World Cup, what it does that people are walking down the street, they're showing their by the fact that, oh, I am Colombian or I am English and, we're in the final or in the semi-finals. And it completely grips the whole nation and it's all what people are talking about. And even if people don't even have any necessary interest and love for the game, they're still swept by the fact that there's a sense of pride in, oh, well, this is a nation that I'm from and we're doing so well at a sport that so many people love around the world.
So I just want to say there's a few of our listeners that I know are in the UK right now, and I would love for you guys to comment to tell me, like, if you're not interested in football, does the World Cup generate this kind of, like Marshall's talking about, pride, and I'll watch because, if my home country happens to be playing, I would love to hear from you. So give us your thoughts. I want to hear from you.
Soccer represents everything about who you are and where you come from. I mean, in so many countries all around the world, kids are born into families that have an affiliation with a specific club. You are, christened into this club at birth. You are raised, completely associated and supporting this club. This is who you are. When you're watching your teams play, they everything from the style of play to the colors on the field to the music that's there to what the fans are singing and dancing about. It's all wrapped up in who you are. Your entire identity is rooted in the sport. And it's a sport that anyone can relate to. It's so many, certainly in so many of the poorer countries around the world, you wrap up soda cans and take rubber bands and trash, and you make yourself a little ball and you play, no matter who you are, where you're from, dirt poor, super wealthy. Soccer is what you know. It's what you can play no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, and it's what bonds you. It's what connects you to each other. And for certainly, I think, I can think of so many times, at least, with my mom who she worked so hard. She worked so many hours, long days. But I mean, when it came around to soccer, whether it was on weekends and it was watching, my brothers and me play, or it was watching our club on TV, or was certainly the World Cup, it was what we all sat around to do and watch together. This was part of who we are. It's what brought us together. We had this common bond, no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think that you can play soccer, no matter what.
Right.
If you can find a ball, if you can find any cylindrical object, you can play. And, I can liken that to a baseball in America. That's kind of one of those same sports, or even basketball, where, like you don't need to have, football, you have to have a certain shape of a ball in order to play, meaning American football, to play it. But I think that you're right. It's rich or poor, wherever you are,
it's
whatever
country,
it's like for everyone. I want to say that in the article that where Tite was talking about his experience on his road to becoming the national team's coach, he started back with this idea of him being a boy, and he was very fortunate that his family had at least a radio that they could listen to the World Cup on, which was a very, unusual thing. Yeah. And how the experience of listening to football on the radio was almost more rich than it is watching it today. Yeah. And again, I kind of connected to that a little bit because I used to.
There's nothing like the excitement in the voice of these announcers.
For sure. I mean, there's some craziness that
happens. Whole
other
world.
I don't know. Maybe Jarvis can find a game where there's an announcer announcing goal where they
announcer really, or a Colombian announcer.
Yeah, exactly.
Soccer.
And you hear them score,
and they go flying, and shirts come off, and it's a whole thing. But I connect to that because when I was a kid, I used to listen to Vin Scully on Dodger Radio. And I just because you couldn't go to every game, so we listened to it on the radio. And I'm not that old; they did have television, but you'd be in the car or whatever. But I actually loved listening to baseball on the radio. I actually preferred it in a lot of ways because just the commentary and the conversation and that excitement that builds up. So, there's some stuff going around in this World Cup that's going to make it a little bit more interesting, and that is that many of the major teams who should be playing, including the United States, oh my gosh, should we hang our heads over here, like in complete, just embarrassment.
But and it's not to take away from the pain of the U.S. team or the fans of the U.S. team, but I'm telling you, this country did not experience what Italy went through.
Oh my gosh! That's what I was going to say.
When their team failed to qualify, I mean, we get upset. This is a big deal, and like you said, this is embarrassment. But I mean, this is not just embarrassment in Italy. This is profound loss and grief to your core.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it's not just Italy.
Yeah.
It was also
You got the Netherlands.
The Netherlands.
the Netherlands.
You know,
Oh.
they were finalists. To put it another, they were finalists back in 2010.
Yeah.
Semi-finalists in 2014. You know, this is a team that has a rich history of reaching consecutive World Cups in the mid to late 70s.
Yeah.
But wait, before you go on, Jarvis, I think found a clip, because we all have to listen to it, because it's amazing. What is it? Is it a... No?
Just as you mentioned the Netherlands, actually.
Nederland gaat in de halve finale komen. Ik heb opeens zo'n gevoel dat we in de halve finale gaan komen. Met de balbezit voor Frank de Boer. Frank de Boer speelt de bal. Heel goed naar Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp neemt de bal aan. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp.
No.
Okay, but listen. But we have to, because I'm telling you, that's wild. But I'm telling you, Jarvis, you've got to pull up Andres Cantor.
Who?
Andres Cantor, Andres, last name Cantor, our Spanish-speaking announcer.
No, I can assure you, those people in Holland,
Yeah.
when that goal went in, I remember watching that game, and Dennis Bergkamp played for Arsenal at the time.
Yeah.
When that goal went in, I can see every Dutchman
Man.
and every Arsenal fan and most football fans who just love the beautiful game would have at least said, God, I can't believe that, or would have screamed at their television set, or would have gone absolutely crazy.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Last minute of the game as well, by the way.
Exactly.
All right, here we go.
Let's see.
That
Let's
is
see,
football.
Jarvis.
You don't hear American announcers doing that.
You don't
Wait.
you not hear Al Michaels go crazy because, I don't know, Rob Gronkowski caught a ball on the last second of the Super Bowl.
Look at that.
I love the long note. He held that out for like...
Oh, man.
That is the beauty of football, by the way, because
All right. I love it. Thank you,
there's something
Jarvis.
so raw in the emotion.
Exactly.
When that goal goes in,
Yeah.
it's almost inhumane to kind of control yourself.
It
and be
is.
Like, no, I'm
It
not
is.
gonna
You feel it
celebrate.
and you lose it.
I-
You are completely
You go
consumed by what has just
absolutely
happened.
crazy.
I am all
Every
in.
cell in your body.
I am all
It's-
in.
It is. I know it from watching England a lot, or it's like, you know, especially where you're with family or you're with friends, and
Yes.
it's like.
Listen, I understand the emotion. It just you don't see, and Americans are very emotive, and we
Sure.
get very passionate about our sports. I mean, like, you know, for me, it's always USC. Like that to
Yeah.
me is the top. If USC is winning,
Right.
for those of you not in the United States, that's University of Southern California in American football.
Yeah.
That, like, I could go to tears. I
Right.
get it on a
Right.
certain level. But then, you know, I walk away and it's like, okay.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, in Italy, are any of the Italian players ever going to be able to play again? I mean, Tite was talking about how he didn't make one cup. It wasn't even like a World Cup. It was, you know, a League Cup. And his team didn't make the finals, and they completely destroyed all the players' cars.
Oh,
there
yeah.
was like fire bombs in the locker room. I mean, people go to serious
Extreme.
extremes.
Lives are lost. Lives
Lives are
speaking
lost.
of Colombian soccer, lives are lost
Yeah.
over big matches.
Which
That's not okay.
no,
But
no.
it just
can we
there's
say
an
for the
extreme.
record that's not okay?
That's not okay. But they're, you know,
But it's
people take it
passionate.
seriously.
It's passionate.
It happens.
It happens.
I mean, in Italy, it's you know, they haven't missed the World Cup since 1958. This is
It's so
this is
wild.
Italians. Again,
Yeah.
these guys. It's Italy, to put it in perspective, won the World Cup in 2006.
Right.
You know, if my memory serves me right, I think they're 4-time champions.
Yeah.
This is Italy. It's like there's
Yeah.
certain teams that when you get to World Cups, you expect to see.
Right.
Brazil, Italy,
Yeah.
England to a certain extent,
Sure.
Germany,
Sure.
Brazil, Argentina,
Yeah.
Netherlands, and
Yeah.
maybe a couple of others, but generally those type of nations.
Peru didn't make it, right? Or
No, Peru.
No,
are
Peru
there.
is in.
In.
They've lost their
Peru didn't
big.
make it?
They've lost one of their big star players for doping.
Ecuador. Who didn't make it? Another. There's a big South American country. Sorry for not knowing. Who didn't
So
make it?
if I am remembering rightly, that will be
Oh,
yes,
Chile.
I do
Chile.
know. It
It was
will be
Chile.
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 Yeah.
Sorry, I knew I'd get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's
heartbreaking.
exactly. I mean, I remember experiencing it myself, and a lot of football fans in the UK will remember. England USA '94.
Right.
And I remember that because they got beaten essentially in a one-off game against Holland in their group that cost them in '93. And I remember watching that World Cup, and as much as I enjoyed it, it still wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same when England weren't there.
Yeah.
You know, it was painful. It was hard because even though I wasn't expecting England to win it, you want to be a part of it. I guess it's like a prom for many people.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's that one occasion where you get the opportunity to shine on the biggest stage, and if you're not a part of it, it kind of feels it's something missing on your CV.
And it's not just a handful of people who fail to show up. It's not just a team. I mean, your entire country is not there. This is what it feels like. The entire nation has been excluded from something massive.
Right.
The loss is profound.
It's very profound. Before we move off of this, though, I wanted to talk about one of the things that I picked up on when I was living in England.
Yeah.
And that is the challenge of a national team coming together and playing. And this is something that I think Marshall will back me up on. There was always a lot of conversation around the national team not being able to coalesce because you have a group of individuals that are used to playing, you know, on their own teams, oftentimes against each other. So, you know, rivals anyway. And they take a lot of criticism for that. And they've been looking for a coach who could actually help the national team coalesce better. Tite was very eloquent in this article talking about what it means to bring a team together.
Right.
And I'm curious, like, your opinions about not just particularly England, but you can talk about England. You know, how is it that because Americans don't have a lot of world teams. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't do this. When we have a world anything, it's usually us because we think we're the center of the universe.
Yeah, we are the world.
We are the world. So
that's, can I say so? One of my biggest pet peeves just about American sports, for the exception of ice hockey, who never use it, is when they say we're world champions.
Yes, absolutely.
We are. No.
No. Even
I'm there with you on that, Marshall.
You're Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
You are NBA champions.
Yes.
You know, I get that. We acknowledge that it's the best league at the highest level.
Yes. In your country.
In your country.
In your country, yes.
If fair enough, if someone says, well, we're World Series champions, I can loosely allow that one.
Why?
You know?
Why that?
Because I know there was a
because we include Canada.
No,
the Toronto Blue Jays.
There was something with how it became how it became the World Series, and so I can loosely allow that one. But
I don't loosely allow that.
You're American,
but we'll let you. No, I completely agree with Marshall on this.
It's my biggest pet peeve. Yeah. It really is. I love Jane and Rose, for example, when I watch him on ESPN, but when he refers to they are world champions, I'm like, no, please, Jalen, I love you, man.
You did not play the world.
We wanted this show.
Last time I checked, I didn't see Spain and and Latvia and the UK and Argentina.
But allowing a few foreign players on the team does not qualify as playing the world.
Just because Pau Gasol, plays, it doesn't mean you're world champions.
Yes,
we wanted
to undermine the world championship if America got to the World Cup final and actually won it. Everybody thinks they've won an interstate tournament or something.
We did want some controversy today on this show, and I think we've now got it.
But it's so true.
We have a call?
My opinion, and maybe viewers and listeners can chime in on that. But it's
well, we have a caller now who apparently would like to chime in.
Nope.
Oh no!
Oh, it was a joke. A prank call. I love it. Controversy and a prank call. Gotta love it. Listen, I'm not going to disagree with you. I really am not.
Well, but that's always been the conversation. There are other outlets. So,
okay.
But I agree.
Okay, I'm going to move on now.
Two.
Okay, so one of the bits of feedback that we got on social media was, and it's very appropriate because if you saw our last show, that we talked about doping in sports. with a wonderful guest, Allison Wagner, who was a former silver medalist in swimming,
Yeah.
Olympic silver medalist.
Yeah.
So one of our listeners said that they wanted to talk about the idea of CBD and THC, which are CBD less so than THC, but
Yeah.
CBD is a cannabinoid oil, which is part of and derivative from marijuana. THC is a little bit more not psychoactive. There's a word for it that's just gone straight out of my head. It messes with your head. And the idea, and it came up particularly focused on the NFL,
Yeah.
because there has been studies showing that CBD oil and THC actually has a positive impact on brain injury. So as a way to actually in a preventative way, and also after the fact way of helping with traumatic brain trauma that happens from playing football. Also, it has restorative properties, and it helps with pain, that football players should be allowed to take those oils and not be, penalized for it. And the controversy is around the fact that the league will not allow those so-called substances, drugs, however you want to position it, to be used, but yet they have no problem at all allowing their players to take Vicodin,
right,
which is a known opioid that has severe side effects and creates huge addiction in players, and is a lot more...
it masks serious injury and
sets
them up.
Sets people up for more potential injury,
Right.
but frankly, they get addicted.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've seen many recent deaths of famous celebrities, singers, and others who become addicted to things like Vicodin, and their lives end far too soon as a result. And it was really interesting in kind of doing the research on it. There are pleas to the commissioner of football to really visit this as almost like if you care about your players, you will listen to what we're saying and you will allow us to use these substances in order to help us play at a higher level of the game. And I just wanted to put it out there because I watched some different players talk about the fact that they struggled, totally anti-drug,
right,
spent time, money, volunteering for anti-drug organizations, and they are now coming around saying, I smoke pot,
right,
and I'm proud of it because actually I feel better, and so I'm totally torn.
It's a huge conversation here in the U.S. It has been for ages. Is that the case in the U.K., Marshall? I mean, do people talk about this nearly as much as we do here?
Not as much, to be completely honest, ladies. It's what we find here is that there is... we have in the UK, there is definitely a focus on concussion type injuries. In particularly, there's been a huge increase in the number of injuries in professional rugby. But they don't tend to, there isn't as much discussion in terms of alternative types of therapy that is used or forms of healing. But what has been in a lot of discussion recently, in particular with a player, George North, who plays for Wales, and the type of injuries that he's had, sustaining a number of concussions professionally, both for club and country over the last couple of years, has kind of essentially brought it back to light of the fact that the risks that are involved in playing at a high level, and essentially what more needs to be done in order to protect players for the betterment of themselves. And that's very much the case in a sport like with boxing as well.
Sure.
I think what surprised me is that a systematic acceptance of a known addictive drug,
right,
like Vicodin,
yeah,
and others are perfectly acceptable. Sometimes I feel like I'm blind,
what are you not seeing?
Well, because 2 weeks ago I am firmly on the side of no doping and harsh not circumstances,
consequences for violating
sure. that. And now I'm sitting here reading all of this, and I'm going, but you let them take Vicodin?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. How is that not a problem?
Right.
You can get in the car on Vicodin and kill people as much as if you're drinking too much. And it's perfectly okay. In fact, league doctors are prescribing, players with Vicodin all the time.
Right.
So I don't get this. It's totally messed with my brain. And it isn't because I'm smoking pot.
But are you taking CBD oil?
Not yet, but after reading everything I was reading, I'm like, hell yeah.
The benefits are huge.
Benefits are huge.
Yeah. The benefits are huge.
You guys don't seem outraged. I am outraged.
No.
This is just not
psychotropic. Thank you, Betsy.
Is it a case that more and more people are now awakening to the alternatives that are available, and maybe and I'm not saying this is definitely the case, but is maybe an organisation like the NFL kind of institutionalized itself to the point where they have links potentially maybe with organisations that are, it's just the way that they've known, the culture that they've been brought up, whether it's with pharmaceuticals, where it's the fact that they'll say, look, you know what, this is the issue, I will treat it with that particular prescribed drug.
Right.
And now what's happening a lot more of that, people, organisations, the media, people out on the streets, social media are becoming more and more aware of what the actual effects are. And it's all more coming to the surface. And people are now saying, well, hang on a minute. I've been playing, say, a sport like the NFL for X amount of time. I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that anymore. I'm actually rather play, maybe instead of 10 years, I'll play 5, 6 years and then get out while it's good. Or actually, you know what? I'm willing to want to seek alternative forms of therapy in order to help myself and to heal my body, as opposed to just essentially taking what you're telling me to take because it might suit somebody else who you've essentially in partnership with.
Well, and also I think there are ways that there have to be ways that they can monitor what is being taken. Like, I'm not for sitting around smoking a doobie. I'm really not.
Right.
I struggle with that. We're in California and we're in
and now it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. You walk down the street and you smell. I mean, when I lived in England, it's legalized. So you smell people smoking it, and frankly, it bothers me as much as cigarette smoke does. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating that, but there are ways to take the therapeutic elements of
the
it,
oils, the capsules. Yeah.
And it could really help the players, and at the end of the day, it can help the league because you have a bunch of players. As one article I read talked about the fact that like Marshall's saying, at some point the players are going to start making a decision that they don't want to have to deal with the ramifications of what happens to their bodies.
Right.
And they're going to start suing the league, and I guarantee you they're going to start suing the league if they haven't already for allowing opioid addictions to come in. So for me, it just seems like good business to find a way to allow players to take CBD oils and not have them banned for using a substance.
Right. But it's going to take that player engagement. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. They have to step up and speak up.
And is that only going to start to happen when an organisation like the NFL realise that it affects their bottom line?
Exactly.
Because that seems to be the common factor with anything.
It's about money, isn't it?
It's whether it be TV ratings or whether sponsors say no, or ultimately, when star players, would it take someone like an Aaron Rodgers to turn around and say, right, actually, guys, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't want to do A, B, C, D. I'm not prescribing to this anymore.
Right.
Things need to change.
Yeah.
In order for them, for the NFL to turn around and say, right, actually, you know what? We need to look into this because now it's finally affecting our bottom line.
Exactly.
I want to thank all of you who've joined us in the last few minutes. We really appreciate you being here. We're talking with our foreign correspondent, Marshall Norbal, and I'm here with Eira Switzer, and we're just having a freestyle day where we're talking about whatever we want. And we were just coming around to the conversation of doping in sports and how CBD oils translate into sports, and should it be banned, should it not be banned? And it leads me to another topic that I wanted to raise. This was
Before you raise it, what's the phone number folks can call into if they have questions or comments on what we've said so far?
Oh, you're so good. 323-284-7826. And no Prince Edward in a can phone calls, please. No prank calls.
Exactly.
Anyhow, one of the things that's happened recently, Marshall, I don't know if you caught on to this one, and it's something that I forgot to tell you I wanted to talk about because I remember it beforehand.
Okay.
Robinson Cano,
Seattle
Mariners, longtime baseball player at the highest levels, superstar, game changer in any team he's been on, was just recently suspended for 80 games.
That's huge.
That's more than half a
half
season. Yeah, or about half a season.
And how much money does that translate to?
For him, a small amount, very small.
Of only?
$11.85 million of lost salary for that suspension. It's a shed load of money.
Yeah.
A shed load of money. And why? Because he was found to be taking a performance-enhancing drug, although he's saying that it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a diuretic. However, when somebody's taking a diuretic, it does have a masking effect on performance-enhancing drugs.
Right.
And as they pursued him in terms of what happened and what he took, they never came out and said anything because it kind of ended with, okay, you're suspended.
Yeah.
He chose not to fight it. But there's a lot of speculation that he chose not to fight it because of the fact that there must have been something there that was being masked by the diuretic. He claims that he was taking some medicine prescribed by a Dominican doctor.
Sure.
So drugs that are not necessarily familiar to us here in the United States, but that he got at home for other reasons. Now, whether he did or not is important, but not the point of this.
Yeah.
It's how he handled it that I find to be actually remarkable in these days.
When no one likes to take responsibility and be gracious about the consequences imposed upon them.
So what does he do? He could have fought it.
Yeah.
He was starting to appeal it. He could have fought the length of the suspension.
Sure.
I mean, if he was going to accept that there was some kind of suspension that was going to happen, he could have fought that. And what did he do? And I got to tell you, with all of we had this show a few shows back, and we'll probably revisit it again, with all of the junk that happened in the NFL this past year where people were acting like complete idiots and not being suspended, being fined, complaining that they shouldn't have been when they were flat out doing wrong.
Yeah.
What does Cano do? He comes along, he says, I accept it.
Yeah.
I accept it, and it's my decision to accept it. I am not going to pursue an appeal, and I'm going to ride it out.
And that was refreshing.
Oh my God.
Wasn't
it was shocking. That was as shocking to me as what the players that are always battling against,
sure,
a suspension and fighting tooth and nail no matter what.
Yeah.
Hashtag Tom Brady.
Yeah. Hashtag Tom Brady and Ezekiel Elliott.
I love it.
The list, unfortunately, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Who, want to battle. And he's not losing a small amount of money. We're not talking a paycheck.
Sure.
$11.85 million.
In fairness, I'll chuck a little caveat on that $11 million.
Yeah.
He has recently, in the last few years, signed a $200 million deal with the Seattle Mariners as well.
Sure.
So
Marshall, listen, it doesn't matter if you're making he's making $23 million a year, so he's losing approximately half of his salary. If you went
don't get me wrong, I'm just I guess maybe I'm playing devil's advocate.
You're just saying that he's okay when it comes to money.
He's
so it
okay
makes it easier to stand back and take responsibility and say, I'm not going to fight it this time around because I've still got X number in the bank.
I dare any of you to be okay with that.
No, I wouldn't
losing the money.
For sure not.
I don't care how much you make.
It was gracious, and we accept that.
It's
still
acknowledged.
got a lot of money still that's available to him. It's not going to prevent him from going out and buying a Rolls Royce or Ferrari.
So I guess what you're saying is, in this one case, it's not all about the money.
I still respect the fact that he can take ownership and responsibility of the situation and not try to fight it. As sometimes, especially in a sport where it's so dominated, as you both know, by the PED era,
right?
Especially where everything is kind of like, oh well, you've hit 600 home runs and 3,000 hits, but were you juiced up?
Sure.
It's and we've seen what's happened before with the Ryan Braun scandal, for example, a few years back, and it's kind of,
how about A-Rod?
You start to think you actually respect and admire the fact that he's come out and said, yeah, okay, I'm not going to fight it.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I respect it so much because I respect it because it's hard. It had to have been hard to do. Yeah. I don't care how much money you have. Taking responsibility, even if you are going to stand up and say, I didn't know, whether he did or not, he's taking responsibility. It's refreshing in the sport, any sport, to see that happen, which makes me cringe because it's the one thing about sports that drives me insane. That they're, like, you're going to cheat. If you get caught, just stand up and own up to it and move on. But what's also sad and a bit shocking to me is that when you read about this, nobody's standing up going, like, giving him a standing ovation going, hey, this is awesome. Yeah. I mean, at least in my review of everything that's going on, it's not what you're seeing. You're not seeing the press coming out and going, hey, he needs to be a big example. Let's put him up on a pedestal and say, okay, you made a mistake, but you're willing to accept it. Good on you. Why? I mean,
is that what you would like? Is that what you would like to have happen? I mean, it's just not. It's not. Where's the story in that? Where's the story in that?
Yeah, it's like it's poor. I think it's more the fact that people are seeing it from the perspective that, oh well, can the Mariners make the playoffs?
Yeah. Oh, it's all about the loss of the Mariners and how
they get out of the AL West. Can they? Oh no. Oh well, they had a chance with him in it, but now forget it.
And how they're going to spend their $11.85 million that they now have because they don't have to pay his salary. Yeah,
can he still get into the Hall of Fame? Oh well, he's accepted a PED suspension. Oh, how is it going to look? Oh, it's as Ira said, where's the story? There's no story in the fact that he should be maybe celebrated is the wrong word, but certainly applauded for the fact that he's just not decided to go on this kind of huge run and carry on the process of trying to clear his name.
Well, I understand that people love controversy, and I understand that people love to have, the kind of the negative side of the story. I'm hopeful, that through our show and other shows that people highlight, the fact that somebody took responsibility in this world.
No, absolutely. I mean, and in this day and age where we're seeing across industries, people being accused of things left and right, and evidence very clearly supporting these allegations, and people just really struggling to own up to what they've done and just say, hey, I was wrong. I did it. We're just not seeing enough people do that. So, I agree with you. It's something to be acknowledged, and it was good on him.
Yeah, really good on him.
Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes left. So is there anything else you would like to talk about before I throw the next thing out?
No, tell us. What's the next thing?
We don't have a lot of time.
What do we have 5 minutes to discuss?
We don't even have 5 minutes. One of the other topics that one of our listeners wanted us to discuss was, why is it that women's sports are not televised, supported? Why is it that the women always get the short end of the stick? And I have a lot of opinions about it, actually. And I don't disagree that they should, there should be more attention paid to women's sports. But I understand it.
You understand why it's not happening?
I understand why it's not happening. I do. I look, if we're going to come back to it's a money thing.
Yeah, the money's not there.
The money's not there.
For sure.
And do I think female athletes are as impressive, as relevant, as strong, as capable, and as interesting as the male athletes? No doubt, no question in my mind. But, okay, I'm not a big fan of women's sports. I'm sorry. You can all throw something at me. I don't watch.
When
Right.
you
I don't
say
watch.
women's sports, I mean, we can see there's some pictures. Maybe is it for example events like at major championships, Olympics, World Cups, football perspective here? Is that okay, or is it more from just a club kind of professional level? For example, I don't know, the WNBA.
Listen, I love basketball, but
Yeah.
I never tune into the WNBA.
No, I mean, it's just not what people do. I've tried to get, I take my kids to watch the Sparks, but it's not something I can rally my groups of friends to join us on and go and spend money. And let me just say, it's hardly money. I mean, these tickets are super cheap.
Yeah, no, and it saddens
If you love
me.
good basketball and you want to just go and watch, this would be the thing to do. So inexpensive, so great to go and do with your kids, and people just don't go.
I think there's a marketing issue at the end of the day. I don't think that and anybody has cracked the nut on how to position women's sports in a way that would make people want to watch, because there's an expectation that it's going to be equivalent to, like, the WNBA should be the same as the NBA. Well, it shouldn't. There's different aspects to it. I don't think.
Yeah, and there's not as many teams for starters.
There's not as many teams. There's lots of different aspects. I just don't feel like, I think that there's a big marketing issue around all women's sports, and it's not cracked yet. And I think somebody's going to come along and crack it one day, and then I'll watch.
Well, we hope so. But look, going back to how we started the show with the World Cup, people do not get excited about Women's World Cup
Yeah.
soccer.
Which is too bad, because the women are actually
That's
far
a
more
shame,
successful.
You know,
It's a shame.
and for the record, the
Absolutely.
U.S. women's national team is by far the most successful World Cup
Yes.
team
Yeah, for sure.
across the board, men or women, in terms of how much money they bring in.
We're getting the
So-
get off air. We got to go,
Huge
everyone.
success.
Thank you, everybody who joined us. We really appreciate it. We hope that you had as much fun as we did. Yeah. We are back in 2 weeks' time on June
Something.
Forgot the date. We'll post it. Anyway, Marshall, thank you so much for joining us. We
Pleasure.
always appreciate those of you who
Wendy,
watch.
thank
We
you.
are on distilleryinc.com. You can find us on Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, CastBox. Thank you, Jarvis. Thank you, UBN, and we will see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, everyone.
Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's UBNradio.com.